Hi everyone, David Aragona here with Craig Milkowski to take a look at one of the stakes on Saturday at Gulfstream. Race 8, it is the Hutcheson Stakes for the 3-year-olds going 6 furlongs. No Derby preps this week, Craig, but we do have this stakes race for the 3-year-old sprinters on tap. Field of 7 signed on. But before we get to the field for this race, I just want to remind people that you should check out on DRF.com the recently launched new version of TimeformUS. We are launching a redesigned, upgraded version of TimeformUS, which is accessible within your DRF PPs, a tab right next to classic PPs and formulator in your DRF past performances. It's still in beta. Not all of the features are available yet, but you should go check it out. Updated versions of the pace projector and other features that really look great. I know Craig and I are excited about it, and we'll show some screenshots of that in our preview that is upcoming. So make sure to try that out for a limited time for free on DRF.com. Craig, let's take a look at this field of 7 runners, and we're going to have a prohibitive favorite in this race in the form of the number 3 Super Chow. I won't be surprised when he dips quite a bit lower than even money when all is said and done.
Yeah, I think that morning line is probably about as good as you can make it. If they made it 4 to 5, I wouldn't argue with that as well. And I would still expect them to be a little lower than that. It's kind of funny with this race. You mentioned no Derby preps. I can't remember when the Hutcheson kind of kicked off the 3-year-old series at Gulfstream. It was a lead up to the Swale, but obviously things have changed. Neither one of those are a Derby prep. And this one actually comes after the Swale, and it's just more a sprint race.
Yeah, the 3-year-olds don't race enough these days for connections to want that natural progression from sprints to routes during their Derby Trail campaign. So the Hutcheson is just a kind of a standalone sprint race at this point, and all of these horses are really confirmed sprinters, at least right now. Before we get to the individual contender PPs, let's take a look at some of those features in TimeformUS, beginning with the pace projector. And Craig, that favorite, the number 3 Super Chow, is a horse that has a lot of early speed. There are some others in here that will want to be forwardly placed, but you know what the plan is going to be with Chantal Sutherland and Super Chow. They're going to go to the front.
Yeah, he is very fast, obviously, and you see the fast pace flag, or we should have the fast pace flag on there. It's one that it's going to be a very fast pace, not a fast pace for him, but a fast pace for the ones chasing him. And I think that is going to play into my betting strategy. We'll talk about as we move along.
You see that late pace flag attached to the number 5, Live His Life. That's one of the things that we've added in the new version of TimeformUS, just showing the horse with the fastest late pace rating in the field, something that you do want to pay attention to in races that are likely to feature fast paces. So the horse with the best finishing speed is often one that you do want to include. We'll talk about him and his chances to pick up the pieces in just a little bit, but before we get there, let's take a look at the TimeformUS finish projector. And Craig, no surprise to see that the algorithm landing on the favorite here, the number 3 Super Chow, just comes in with the best speed figures, facing the best runners in terms of class in his prior starts. Just a logical horse that you could predict to win this race.
Yeah, it's one I was actually even surprised by the margin. I haven't used it enough to know how those margins work, but he has a pretty substantial edge in the speed figure department. So no surprise at all. He's shown as a horse clear at the wire.
Well, let's start to go through some of the contenders, and we'll take this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1 Moon Capture, and we'll take a look at his most recent start on the Tapeta surface at Gulfstream. Made his first 3 starts on the dirt, switched over to the synthetic last time, and it seemed like he really relished that new footing, showed better early speed, just drew off around the far turn, and wins this race pretty impressively in the end. You do want to note he never changes leads in the stretch. He's on his left lead throughout. I saw the same thing from him in his prior start on the dirt, so he's just one of these horses that doesn't really change leads. That's something that you probably do want to note. But Craig, you have to wonder at this point, is he just a synth specialist, and can he transfer that form back to dirt?
That is the big question. I have to brag a little bit on my Photoshop skills because there are no figures in the PPs for the last running line. For some reason, I will get that fixed, hopefully before people even watch this video. But the horse ran 100 that day. It's a pretty big jump from his dirt races. He was bet that day. When you look at his breeding ratings, it does seem like maybe he would be a horse who favors synthetic. But given that big speed figure, I wouldn't argue too much with people who think he could go back to dirt. It's not like it was a gigantic number improvement, but just the way he handled it seems like that might be his preferred surface to me.
Yeah, just the way he finished in that most recent start was so much more powerful, and his stride was so much more fluid than I had seen from him in his prior dirt races. So, just from a physical handicapping standpoint, he looks more like a synthetic turf horse, at least to me. Moving on to the number two, Diamond Cool. He is a horse who is one that could be picking up the pieces in this race. I know he was shown fairly close up on the pace projector, but he's just not as naturally fast as some of those that are drawn to his outside in here. So maybe Jose Ortiz will ride him a bit more conservatively. He is a horse that has been going slightly longer distances, 7 furlongs in his three most recent starts, and has kind of gotten there at the eighth pole and then flattened out a little bit. So maybe the slight turn back to 6 furlongs could work for him.
Yeah, he's a horse I would expect to be more a mid-pack runner. We see last time when the pace was fast, he was kind of chasing it from behind. Maybe even drop further back at the shortest distance, if a shorter distance if things get hot. So the races he was up close were either at longer distances or didn't have that quick of a pace. So I would expect him to be one at least trying to make a run later on.
Let's move on to that favorite, the number three, Super Chow. And we'll check out one of his rare losses last time out in that grade three swale when he went down to defeat as the 4-5 favorite. Was beaten by a pretty good horse here in the second choice General Jim, who ran him down. Also in this race is Two of a Kind, who's going to finish a distant third. But you could see Super Chow, he's trying to battle back when General Jim ranges up alongside him in mid-stretch and just not quite able to hold off that foe. General Jim's a decent horse. He was coming off a troubled trip in his prior start, and then unfortunately was unable to contest the Fountain of Youth next time out when he had to be scratched due to illness. But Craig, that was not the first time that Super Chow has run a nice speed figure. Got a 109 that day, the same number that he had gotten for his prior victory in the Limehouse, and he's just likely facing a softer field from top to bottom than he's met in some of his recent starts.
There are no General Jims in this field. Nobody's run even close to those 109 speed figures he's run the last two times. So he is going to take some real beating here. He's a horse I expect to be strong this year as one of the better sprinters. Maybe 7 furlongs is just a little outside his scope, but he's just a very fast runner. And anytime he shows up in a sprint race, he's going to be a factor.
Yeah, this horse has raced 7 times, and he's been beaten by just 3 horses in his entire career. Damon's Mound, who looked like one of the best 2-year-olds last summer, Gulfport, who's a grade 1 placed runner, and then last time General Jim. So it's taken some pretty good horses to beat him, and I'm not sure there's anybody of that quality in this Hutcheson. Moving on to the number 4, Two of a Kind. He's the other horse that you saw in that replay of the swale that we just showed. He finished far behind Super Chow that day, and it was basically the same story in his start prior to that in the Limehouse. He's finished 9 lengths, or I should say 10 lengths and 11 lengths behind Super Chow twice in a row. So I don't see what's supposed to make him be able to turn the tables today, Craig.
No, it's hard to imagine. The only thing I would maybe surmise is that they would try something different, because why else would you keep running against this horse? Maybe they would try to take him off the pace, but I'm never a big fan of that either, because he's shown success running on the front end and winning races. So he just seems caught between a rock and a hard place in here, and I don't think there's any good answer for him.
Number 5, Live is Life, is actually the stablemate of Super Chow, going out for the same owner and trainer combination. So maybe he's in here partly to help the race go. If they were thinking that the racing office had a small field, they're just going to enter another horse to help it actually get filled for Super Chow. But I think everybody is open to filling out the exacta and trifecta placings in this race, so I'm sure they're running a horse that has a little bit of a chance. And Greg, he actually fits on speed figures compared to the other horses in this race. The big question for Live His Life is going to be the turn back in distance, since he's primarily focused on route races in his recent starts.
Yeah, it's just a matter if he gets that hot pace on the front end. It's not like he has no early speed. We can see he's led races going 2 turns and the 1-turn mile at Gulfstream, albeit with slow paces, but it's not like he's some plotter. So turning back to 6, maybe he's going to find himself getting a good trip near the back of the field and let others do the chasing of the favorite and see if he can come pick up at least some of the pieces.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility that he could pick up pieces in this race. It does strike me as one that probably is better going a little bit longer, but given the specific situation, if this race starts to come apart, he's one that should be at least finishing at the end. The number 6 is You Better Be Joking, and we'll take a look at his lone start when he made his career debut last November at Aqueduct and got the job done this day. And his career debut was sent off at 4-1 for trader George Weaver. And Craig, I remember this race having handicapped Aqueduct on a daily basis. This was not the strongest maiden field. It didn't appear that way going in, and it did not receive a particularly high speed figure. Though we have seen the third place finisher Cool Kathmandu come back to improve in his next start. He got a 99 TimeformUS speed figure when he came back for his next race, but he's really the only horse that took that big jump up out of the race. So this guy's got quite a few things to prove from a speed standpoint.
He does. The one upside to that is this race came back in November. So we're talking, what, a good 4 or 5 months later now as a he ran that figure as a 2-year-old. So with natural improvement, he could make it into the 90s pretty easily, I would say. I do have your concerns about that maiden field. It wasn't very good, but at least he won the race easily, so I don't want to hold it against him too much. But it's hard for me to envision a scenario where he was able to jump all the way up to near the 110 mark, which is what it's probably going to take to beat the favorite.
Yeah, they're running him in a stakes race, so I assume the connections expect some kind of step forward, but he's going to have to move forward a lot, as you said. The final runner in this field is the number 7, Certain. This is a horse who is actually still a maiden, has never won in 3 starts. His last 2 of those were on the turf, and he did achieve some minor placings in each of those races. Was only tried the dirt once before, Craig. And I guess if you want to give him an excuse for that lone dirt start, it's just who he was running against, because he was in one of the toughest maiden fields that we saw anywhere last year for the 2-year-olds, won by Arabian Night with Determinedly second, who went on to place in stakes after that. So he was meeting some good horses on debut, just didn't really do much running in that race.
No, he showed some early speed, which I guess is a good sign before dropping out. I really didn't know what to do with this horse with the improving speed figures. And I mean, he's a long shot. If you want to take a shot with him, I get it. But what really turned me off is when I clicked open the work tab and looked. And since his last race, he's had 3 workouts and they've all been on the turf. So it doesn't seem like this was some plan to try on dirt. Maybe just they knew it was a short field, wanted to take a chance. So, good luck if you play him. You're going to get paid, but he's not for me.
Let's take a look at the picks for Craig and I in the Hutcheson Stakes, and we're just chalking out here, Craig. I'm not trying to beat Super Chow. You're not trying to beat Super Chow. Neither of us likes to swallow these short prices, but it's just hard to build a case for anybody else in this race.
Yeah, if I was going to make a play, it would just be that stablemate exacta 3-5, assuming the 5 is going to be around that double-digit range. Hope he gets a decent exacta, because I do think he's going to get a nice setup here. And sometimes those turnbacks get overlooked in races where I think some horses are really going to get used up chasing Super Chow.
Yeah, I put the number 2 Diamond Cool second. Not really saying anything clever there. I think he's the narrow third choice on the morning line. Just not really viewing this as a race where there are too many wagering angles. So both Craig and I have that number 3 Super Chow on top in the Hutcheson Stakes. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.